to the May 17th Finance and Facilities Committee meeting. Board members present are Kara Coates, Dion Manley, Earl Pickle, and Tony. And we will start with phase 2 update. Mark.
Okay, thank you. Please screen share here.
We apologize for starting a little bit late. We thought the other meeting would get done quicker. Really good. But that's okay. We will make up time.
It just went up. I kept it from going up to when I actually paid it. So it just
Okay, so we'll start as we typically do with the high school and just a quick update. If you look at the tables between the columns that are headed with last report and current report, you'll see that our completion date and our construction costs for all three segments have remained the same. So there's no change as far as our timeline goes. There's no change as far as our anticipated construction costs go. And the reason for that is because we are still in the middle of our design development document set. Now, one of the things that I shared last month is that DLR had produced a 50% DD set, and Russilli turned that DD set into a cost projection. And as anticipated, given the market that we're in, we did indeed see that it exceeded our budget. It is a 50% estimate, a 50% DD progress set. So what we did with that information is we have gone through kind of a mini value engineering effort to redirect the design where we can without compromising on the DD deliverable in an effort to close the gap on what we are likely going to see when we actually complete the DD set later this month and work on our DD estimate in the month of June. So things are progressing nicely on the high school from a design and cost control perspective. We continue to have bi-weekly coordination meetings with the city. They have continued to offer some guidance and some very helpful feedback relative to our submissions. We were sad to see John Moorhead leave the city, unfortunately. He's been a pretty strong advocate and instrumental in helping us get our submissions to a state, but hopefully the city has a plan to backfill John as well as others that unfortunately have left the city here recently. And we can keep up that positive momentum that was established over the last six to 8 weeks.
They haven't given you an update on like their plan
On the succession plan?
Yeah.
No, we have not heard that. So we will see. We will see. All right. Any questions on the high school? All right. Yes.
For the DD process, how far into the DD process are we right now?
I would
still
say
50% or
no, we're beyond 50%.
Yeah,
We're past 50%. We are on track to have the 100% DD set completed by June 3rd, just after Memorial Day weekend. That will also that date will also coincide with a 100% CD set on the stadium and site package.
The 6-3.
So we're doing a phased delivery of the documents so that we can get the stadium constructed and the site constructed. So the stadium and the site are accelerated. They're going quicker than the actual building itself.
Okay.
The 50% DD set was both site and the building.
So the stadium is more advanced than the building.
Exactly.
Okay.
So that. Go ahead, Catherine.
At any point in the DD process, were there plans in front of either teachers or teacher representatives?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
I didn't sit in a lot of those follow-up meetings, but the process generally, and maybe Dennis can speak to this, or Jill, who sat in a lot of those, but the process generally kicked off with user group meetings and establishing how things were going to lay out. And then the design team would go back to their studio, continue to draw, come back to those user groups and have a follow-up meeting that said, here's the feedback that we received from you, and here's how we've incorporated it into the documents. What say you? Do you want to offer a redirect? Does this look good? Is it consistent with our discussions? Or in some cases, I'm sorry, we couldn't provide for this because it was either too expensive or one reason or another. But those meetings have continued throughout the entire DD process.
Good, that's what I wanted to know.
Yeah.
Because I think it's very important that the people who are using the rooms have an opportunity to vet the plans as they're going through the DD process for functionality, really.
For sure, absolutely, yeah. None of this has been done in a vacuum. That feedback with the staff has been really critical to advancing the design. Jill and Dennis, anything to add?
Yeah, I would just add that there were definitely some user groups that we met with multiple times and more times than maybe other user groups because their learning space might have been a little more complicated. So for instance, the science teachers we've met with several times, the art teachers, the music teachers. So, yep.
Yeah, lab spaces and music spaces are tricky.
Specifically address the stadium piece of the user groups related to that. Yep. So stadium wise, Catherine Harris and Jessica have been big spokespersons and have connected with the coaches, athletes, and band directors and such to
Catherine Harris is the
AD,
and
athletic director, the principal.
Okay.
And I know this month coming up, I believe there's an athletic boosters meeting where they're going to be going over plans and getting some final feedback. And then we also have a conversation going with Rob Seabriak related to making sure that Clem gets some information as well. So yes.
So the user group meetings are continuing through the DD process?
Once we get through DD, the user group conversation shifts to more like furniture and paint and things like that. So they look different. The conversations look different. Dennis, would you agree with that or add anything to
Yeah,
that?
schematic design is kind of where we're getting the walls where they need to be. Design development is what you see here, what's on the wall, what's on the ceiling, the services, outlets and such. And then CDs is really, we're detailing things. And that's where they really start looking like blueprints, and most times user groups don't understand. So we're really more talking to the contractors at that time
Yeah.
in construction documents.
So we've had conversations about, some of the types of furniture and where they might need it in their classroom, like specifically science teachers. What kind of lab tables do you want? Do you want them connected to the wall? Do you want it, movable, that type of thing? But we haven't actually brought any furniture vendors in or, trialed anything like that. So, conversations after DD are pretty set on where walls are, where we're going to have casework and cubbies and storage and all those types of things. And it's just some more finite details that are discussed at CD.
The reason why I was asking the question is because the email distribution list for the meetings didn't include any teachers, and I just wanted to make sure that the plans were getting, that teachers were getting eyeballs on plans.
Absolutely.
And you're saying that's happening.
Absolutely.
And then is there or is there not going to be a meeting next week for whatever group?
The master facilities,
Right, yeah.
Gary. We were looking at either the 9th of June or the 14th.
So that would be after 100% DD.
Yes, because there's time in there for estimating. So the
Pricing.
facility will be estimating for a good 3 to 4 weeks between that time. And based on the estimates, then we'll go back and do value engineering based on the estimates, because I'm sure they're not going to come in under the environment we're in.
Okay.
So there's times to make changes in value engineering and even change scope, but it'll be difficult.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure that the teachers were at the table while this was being designed.
And Steve, based on those meetings, when is the neighborhood meeting? Is that
So
still
what?
the neighborhood meeting?
We're meeting with the neighborhood on June 2nd. We've been talking with our design team, and they're going to have some renderings, some things to show them with landscaping and other things, so that we can, kind of listen to them and find out, get their feedback on some things. We're gonna talk obviously about lighting, about sound, and the other things they're concerned about, I think, landscaping, fencing, privacy fencing.
And Catherine, I just want to clarify that as we've been having user group meetings, there have been like representatives from each department. It hasn't been like all.
That's what I meant by like just at
Yeah.
least somebody from a department representing, because I know you can't have that many people.
Angela?
I have two questions, actually. The first one is the city totally okay with stadium and site? I mean, are they like involved in the process? Do they have concerns or anything?
That's what those bi-weekly meetings are about, and Shore Architects, they're handling a lot of the permitting, and so those meetings are about, what does the city need from us so that we can get started. Work is going to begin sometime in early August on the stadium.
But the city has expressed any concerns or objections with how you laid out right now?
Okay. And then my second question was about athletic fields. Like I know right now, there's a lot of green space that I've seen lacrosse out there. They break out and they go into the athletic fields. Like I've
Behind,
seen
visitors
football
bleachers,
players, they put tires
yeah.
out there.
Yeah.
Will there be any kind of space like that, practice green space?
We won't have a ton of it, but we are working really hard to get as much green space as we can on the site. But we will have, additional practice field and training space out of Black Lake Athletic Complex as well. So, we will have the stadium, we'll have shot and put spaces, we'll have, I think,
They could go indoors into the.
right, into
the
the field
field
house
house.
and, yep, but not green space like we have right now back there.
When you say field house,
Once it's built. In the short term,
Yeah.
the short term would be back in the gyms, right, if they're available.
And the field house, Angela, is on the south end of the building.
okay, so is it shown here? Is that?
It's this,
Yep.
it's this big block kind of down
Yeah,
here,
that's
the southernmost block here.
Okay.
And it's comprised of 3 basketball courts. So
But
it's
not behind the competition
behind the
gym. So
competition gym.
the regular competition gym would be first and then the field house would be below,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And then off to the right, there's locker rooms and training rooms and official rooms and all those other spaces.
Weight room, wrestling.
Yep.
Okay, any other high school questions or commentary?
So Mark, are you going to talk about Black Lake Athletics separate or?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
slide
Separate
number
slide.
4.
Okay. So I just want to bring up the tough decisions we're going to have ahead on the high school. Right now at 50% DD, we're 10% over, which the percentage is a good number, compared to what's happening in this environment in the market with supply chain challenges, labor challenges, material challenges. But it's a very big number on 158 million. So we have some tough choices ahead. We were very successful. Mark's going to talk about middle school next. We value engineers in middle school. We're about 2.4% over, which in this market is fantastic. But the high school, we have a lot of challenges ahead. And I just don't want to leave the discussion on the high school without putting that on the table about, the value engineering is going to be very, 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 very challenging. And I just want everybody to know that's what we're working on. And Mark's guidance and Brazilian DLR of doing this work as we go at 50% DD was, I think, prescient and really smart because we can redirect the design team as Mark kind of talked about. So tough work ahead.
So excuse me, moving on to the middle schools, we have shifted out of DD and onto CDs. And the middle schools is a really good success story. When we received Russilli's first estimate on the middle schools, we were on the DD package, we were about 5% over. And we started our VE process and got that number down to about 2.5%, just shy of 2.5%. And that was all the while preserving our SD level design and estimating contingencies. So what we were able to do was draw down on those design and estimating contingencies, which is why it's there, in order to offset that 2.4%. And we are still left with a what I would call an above market design and estimating contingency for DD on the middle schools. There was a lot of value engineering that took place, but it was a small amount by virtue of a high degree of discipline on behalf of the district and DLR from the design perspective. A couple of the things that were value engineered are some of the finishes that you might see in a building. A lot of the middle school spaces have recently seen new investment from PI funds on finishes. So we reevaluated the scope of the project and made sure that we weren't tearing something out that didn't need to be torn out if it had seen recent investment. So that's really where we're seeing. On middle school south, the initial design had some stone banding at the base of the exterior wall and then again at the top. And we were able to preserve the stone banding with an alternative material called Ariscraft, which is a very common product. It's used widely in K-12 construction and commercial construction as well. And that base band is preserved. The upper band, unfortunately, is being changed to brick to help save some money. And then on the west, middle school west, the Ox Gym facade was a big fancy curtain wall system for the Ox Gym, and we made that prudently more opaque, which is more cost effective, especially since that's just used for wrestling primarily and a few other rec sports. One of the biggest compromises though at Middle School West is we needed to defer the tennis court relocation. So those costs and that scope element is now being deferred until we have a higher degree of cost certainty across all of the projects, and we can evaluate how to reinvest any kind of savings that the program may have realized. Yeah.
So as Steve said, it is a very good news story.
It is a good news story
for the middle schools.
Yeah.
So I think everything that we've seen as options for the design of the facades, it all still looks really, really good.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're not compromising on anything. We're just being very smart and diligent with the funds, which I think is important.
Exactly.
Yeah, I just want to give a shout out to our team, Bill and Aaron and Scott and Mark and facility and DLR, just really doing painful kind of work to kind of separate needs from wants and really coming up with some innovative ideas to save money. And just one slight correction, Mark, I think the finishes you're talking about were paid for with phase $1.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Passed in 2018.
Yeah.
And you know, so we took our new superintendent around the buildings today, and the buildings look great. You know,
They do look good.
the new LVT and the furniture and the casework that we put in was the 2018 bond issue that passed. So, but great work. Hopefully we can get to the same kind of level on the high school.
Yeah,
It's daunting.
Yeah, I like it.
I feel good.
Yeah, feel good too.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. So I have a question about middle school East, and I don't know if it will be talked about when you talk about the sports stuff at Blacklight. But I know a couple of months ago you mentioned the stadium around the track, not the stadium, but the bleachers and the erosion and everything that we were dealing with. Yes.
But yep, we're gonna get to that actually. Good question. We're gonna get to that. Thank you.
Okay, it's not part of this segment, though. It's part of Scott's.
Just to be clear.
Okay, let's move on to the elementary school where work continues. At Blacklick Elementary School, you can see in the photos, we're actually beginning to put some veneer on the walls. So you're beginning to see that familiar red brick, which is good. In last month, we had just footers put in place for the gym expansion. And in the bottom left-hand corner, you can see that the wall construction is topped out on that particular elevation. So we're making good good progress on the gym addition. High Point Elementary, this is the one that was lagging a little bit behind because of site conditions, but we are now, we have several walls topped out and are making some good progress, and hopefully next month you'll begin to see lids on those structures and some good progress on that gymnasium as well. As far as the dates and the construction cost, you'll see that not anything has changed from the last time we had spoken. And we continue to explore opportunities to save money and cut costs. And one of those examples we just talked about today, getting a deduct change order from Rusili because some of the flooring work that is going to be taking place will be district direct in the admin area. So we've got, we're still trying to find money where we can at the elementary schools. Any elementary school questions?
It looks good. Driving by, it's good to see progress being made. So that's great.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yep. Yep.
So I have students at High Point and at East, so I drive past and we can't get the bus, so I drive past every day. It looks great. My question is the building at High Point, is it the scale of it, the height is so much higher than the current building? Is that because like the room heights are just gonna be bigger, or is it because like the floor, like explain to me, I mean.
Talking about the gym or the classroom?
No, the classroom. So if you're looking at the building to the left where it's being built, it just stands so much taller than the existing building. Will there be a way of like making it look more conducive, like so it's one building in the end? Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah.
it seems like it's like maybe 5 feet taller than the existing building.
Yeah.
And so are the ceilings just gonna be so much higher in those classrooms than the current classrooms?
Yeah, I mean, I think
I have to.
various elevations.
Right.
We have some on the, I think, the south side of the building, a little variation, and then, these are definitely higher. I don't remember specifically the height of the ceilings.
Yeah, I can't. I don't remember.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
that's okay. It's just from the outside,
We're
I
not
mean,
moving the
obviously you're
gyms.
gonna tell them it's an addition.
Well, that
Yeah.
one actually
I'm just
was.
wondering, like,
Yeah, why is
are they
it
gonna have
taller?
like really tall ceilings compared to the classrooms now? It just seems, it almost looks like it could be like a 2-story building, but it's not.
And the one I was showing was actually the gym. This is the classroom, so it's not like a, I don't know exactly what the measurement is, but like on
Yeah.
the rendering, it doesn't look drastically
I mean,
different.
Yeah.
So
Like the
Yeah.
window cutout seems so much bigger to me than the existing. I mean, whoever gets those classrooms, I think it's gonna be,
yeah.
it's gonna be great.
Right.
I'm just wondering, I'm sure in the end, are they gonna like paint the whole building so that it's
No, there'll be a brick that's chosen to match. Now, it's really difficult to match completely. So
Right,
it
especially
will
when it's
look like an
half
addition
an
on
inch
day
or so.
one. It will look like an addition on day one. And the mass is different because I think you've got a pitched roof on that school
Yeah.
right now, but the new addition is not going to have a pitched roof.
Okay.
And what you are likely seeing is a parapet wall that goes up and above the
Okay.
roof.
So like you see across the street.
Right,
Yeah, exactly. So the Donatos, the wall goes
Right.
way up,
But the roof is
ceiling is actually
Okay.
lower. Yeah,
That makes
so
sense.
it's
That's a
hiding mechanicals.
good thing we have that right there.
Always fine, Dennis.
That's
Yeah,
good.
no, we're all thinking pizza.
Exactly.
Any other questions on that? Oh,
actually I do, sorry.
sure.
So then I was thinking, so the existing gym at High Point, my understanding is once the new gym is built, that the existing gym is gonna be like specials and stuff like that, possibly going in there, maybe a second teacher's lounge. So then my question again with the ceiling, so
Yeah.
the current gym ceiling is super tall.
Yeah.
So,
So those
It'll be
ceilings,
okay,
it'll
like
be-
the whole thing will be cut off, or you'll just create a
No.
ceiling?
It'll just be a
void up there.
Okay,
it'll be a
So
ceiling.
there's wires that hold this up,
okay,
that would be really long.
okay. Thank you. I know those are probably silly questions, but I was like, how are they gonna make that?
No, those are good questions.
Question.
Yeah.
Are the interior walls gonna be drywall?
Yes.
How is there gonna be something different?
Well, let me correct myself. I think we made a change at the academic wings to have a hollow core plank lid because of bar joist supply chain issues, and we changed it to a masonry bearing wall condition. So the interior walls will be masonry. The demising walls between the classrooms. Dennis, do you remember if those are metal sun drywall or those masonry?
I think
too?
those are drivable.
Okay. So your corridor walls will be CMU.
Not that this is an update on this, but I understand Lincoln is having to do a lot of repair to their drywall. Is there gonna be anything different to be done so that the walls don't have to be repaired each and every summer from multiple bangs, kicks,
Yeah,
a lot of damage?
I don't know the wall and the drywall type at Lincoln Elementary, but
It's high impact.
it is high impact. Okay.
That was some of the challenges we saw at UA too.
Yeah.
When we toured the high school, the drywall wear and tear was happening pretty quick.
Right. Right.
So, 1 year, you're already having, how many classrooms are needing there in Lincoln?
Corner guards, yeah.
Scott, did you hear that question?
Sorry.
How many classrooms are needing repair in Lincoln? There's quite a bit, but that's.
We'll go through it after everyone's out,
Yeah.
and then we'll just touch everything up. I haven't heard a lot of major repairs. I just like a lot of touch-up paint, kids taking pencils as they walk in.
I've heard kicks.
I mean, there's some areas that we put up some different fibers, different boards to protect from kids that were doing that, but those were very small areas. So, and then you have corner guards throughout there, right?
And then will there also be a plan to allow teachers to put things on the wall again? Because I heard Lincoln also had difficult for.
But the stuff on the wall is not our rule, it's really the fire marshal's rule. And it depends how much they want to let go.
Okay.
And we just switched fire marshals recently. So,
I know that's always a thing, but
Yeah.
I know when the teachers moved, it was kind of an abrupt.
I mean, we put tag strips up so that they could hang things off tag strips. And it's the putting up tape and holding everything up like that is what we try to avoid. So.
It was like decorating.
And we like beautiful classrooms.
Okay. Anything else on the elementary schools? It's good discussion. Okay, Black Lake Athletics update. So last time we were here, the current budget the previous budget was $6.56 million. Okay, we have since reduced in kind of a weird way. We reduced the budget so that $6.56 million was the CMR, the construction manager at risk's anticipated GMP value. Okay, what we ended up doing was pulling out the synthetic turf from the construction manager at risk, and we're now going to do that district direct. So we reduced the CMR anticipated GMP value by that respective amount, which brings it to 5.874. So the total budget really hasn't changed at all, but we're saying the district's going to do a portion, a little more than what was originally anticipated. And Russilli, our construction manager at risk, is going to do a little less. So that's why the dollars are different. The scope is essentially the same. Last week we had a board resolution to issue a GMP to Russilli for that $5.874 million. And what we are anticipating coming out of that is earthwork and utilities to commence the week of 5/30. Hopefully they can mobilize next week, but we shall see. 5/30 is the date that they've been given us. What this project will provide for is 2 softball fields, 2 natural grass practice fields, a synthetic turf field, and 10 tennis courts. There will also be a restroom facility up on the north end near the softball diamonds. And if we see, just like the tennis courts out of Middle School West, if we see some savings once we have cost certainty throughout the entire program, we can again reinvest those savings into further enhancing this site.
Paved lots too.
Oh, yeah, paved parking lots. Yes, thank you. Thank
Oh,
you.
we are going back to pay.
Yeah, that's the plan.
We still are gonna have discussions about the overall. though,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. This
You
is
have the
another.
gravel, like the gravel question.
What was that? No, I was two things. One was just the gravel versus paved, because we had talked about it being gravel
As a cost
versus
savings.
as a cost savings, right? But then the overall was just, this really covers like the basic plan.
That's right.
So we were gonna have further discussion in regards to the high school.
Yeah.
Blacklick, the stadium, just looking to make sure holistically,
Yeah.
we're all on the same page.
Yeah,
on what we
yeah.
can do.
Yeah, exactly. And also map out a potential timeline for enhancing this project. So that is in the works. This is just like the high school and what we're about to embark on with the DD set forthcoming. And making some difficult decisions. This project also has seen some difficult decisions made and will likely continue to see some difficult decisions made until, like I said, we have cost certainty across the entire program and really understand the health of the overall budget that then can be reinvested into enhancing any of these projects, really.
And there are user group meetings occurring for the space. Like Steve, I remember you talked about like softball or baseball are gonna have some.
Yeah. Yeah.
There have been conversations, like I had mentioned with the stadium, between the athletic director and the principal and the coaches and the players.
How about the parents, the booster groups?
Yeah, so we're gonna meet, we talked about meeting with the booster groups and in particular baseball.
Yeah, I'm not certain that everybody is all getting the same information and conveying the same message.
Yeah.
So when are we thinking that we would do the athletic ones in June? Is that
No.
what we're thinking?
No, I think there's one in May yet. I think there's one coming up.
I would just ask that you include booster.
Okay, I'll check on that right now.
If you tuned into our meeting on May 16th, no, the 9th, May 9th.
16th, which is just.
You will notice that the restrooms out there have been shifted from the tennis courts to the north end so that we have both the south and north end covered in terms of restroom facilities. And what the board asked us to do at that meeting in this plan unit development to sketch out what is yet to be done, what our long-term plans are for this site over time, what we can afford now, and a funding source later for the enhancements, batting cage, the outbuildings, those kinds of things. And so we're working with Dave Contact and PLR to have that overall plan, and the funding sources will be tough, but you know, Scott will work with us to figure that out. I think it's going to be a transformative project for our community. I know communities that have rec parks like this and they're used morning, noon, and night by kids of all ages. And so enhancing it that way, it would be, you know, a goal.
That's why it's critical that you talk to the booster groups.
Yeah.
Any other Blacklick athletics questions, comments, thoughts? Okay.
I would just say that a lot of this work, I think you kind of alluded to it, Mark, is excavation, earthwork, utilities. A big part of this budget is getting the drainage right and setting up for future development there. And that cost came in very high. And I think Vasily got two estimates, one from Mr. Excavator and one from Hendrick.
Yeah.
So,
But we have to spend the money in that way.
Right.
I mean, you don't want to have a problem next year or the following year
It sets
with
up
not
the
being
future.
right.
The drainage is
With, right,
really bad.
right,
It is really bad
Really
out
bad.
there right now,
Right.
so there's just a lot of work that has to happen. Yeah,
right.
yeah, we have to make it usable.
The booster meeting was supposed to be Monday night and it was canceled. So we're gonna work on getting that rescheduled and we'll include music boosters. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Thanks so much, Mark.
Thanks, Mark.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is the enrollment study update.
I know you've met some people.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Scott, you haven't met 3 board members.
Mhm.
Nice to meet y'all.
Nice to
Thank
meet
you.
you.
Nice to meet you.
This is Scott Leopold from Cooperative Strategies. We've worked with Scott on a couple different enrollment projections and redistricting. And I don't know if your presentation gives any background of districts you've worked with in the past, as for the new board members, but maybe you can just give a high level of what Strategies does. And
We
we're
are
jumping in.
a national K-12 planning firm. We work all over the country. I happen to live here, always have. My office is in Dublin, Ohio. The company name has changed a couple times, and my desk has stayed in the same place. We work with a lot of the districts that are the suburbs of Columbus, so Olentangy, Hilliard, Dublin. We're starting to do a lot of work in Lincoln County due to the Intel thing, and so we've got a lot of districts we're working with over there. I met with, I was supposed to have this little meeting with the Lincoln County ESC, and then I get there and there's representatives from the governor's office, and congressmen, and it was a much bigger deal than I thought it was going to be, but I gave them some information that I thought they needed to hear, so that's good. Been working with Gehanna, what did we start, 2018? Yeah, my daughter's the youngest daughter just turned 3, so that's how we know. My background is actually GIS. I went to Ohio State for geography. I got this weird job working for a company that does maps for schools. Here I am. So that's kind of my background, what we've been working with. We've seen a lot of different types of development in this area and have tried to build that crystal ball. It's not quite finished yet, but we want to make sure that we can bring up that information that we think is good to look at to make decisions to help us move forward. So what we've shared is we have an enrollment projection report, and this is the cohort survival method. I'll talk about that a little bit more in the future. We've also done the student potential analysis of what as well. I just haven't finalized that report yet. You'll see some pieces of it today. We've looked at the 10-year projected enrollment by grade district-wide and also by boundary. And we've looked at kind of the last 10 years of historical data by grade by year. We've also looked at historic resident live birth counts. And so those are the number of students whose mother resided within the district when they gave birth. So it doesn't matter if they went to Riverside or a hospital in Alaska, if their residence was in the district, that's where they're counted. And that data takes a little bit of time to reconcile, because all those departments of health across the country coordinate. So I think the last year birth data that we have finalized, that preliminary, is 2020. And so birth is important because it's used to project kindergarten 5 years old. And so that's kind of the hallmark of the cohort survival method. I would say this is universally accepted to project, K-12 enrollment for the next 5 to 10 years. We talked a little about apples and oranges last time. So we use the apples, that's the enrollment projection. That kind of gives us that 0 to 10 year window. And then we look at the housing study for years like 10 to 15, and those are the oranges. And so we don't have a methodology that combines them because when you look at the cohort survival method, that tracks the percentage of kids that show up from grade to grade to year. And it bakes in a lot of those things that would be in the housing study. So if we've got new development historically, that will kind of naturally be baked into those survival ratios that we'll be looking at. And so that's why we don't have a model that universally combines them, but we do look at them individually for different reasons. It's good to look at the cohort or the apples for staffing, budgeting, a couple years out. The oranges or the student potential is more useful for, are we going to have enough sites? Are they in the right place? that kind of thing. The big picture macro level, that's when you want to look at that student potential analysis. And so we've updated both of them, and we'll be able to share that with you tonight. So here's our birth data. And so this is collected by the Ohio Department of Health, and we get it by zip code. And so we've looked at all of the zip codes that intersect the district, but we've used 2 of them for the projection. This is what we did last time too. We used 43004 and 43230. And so there are other zip codes that do touch the district, but we haven't used those because the majority of those areas are in other districts. And it's not a direct transfer. We're not counting the actual, because we're looking at that trend. We want to see what that trend looks like historically, and that's what kind of translates to kindergarten. It's not a direct input. So if we have, let's say we wanted to use the entire county's births, we would just have a much lower kindergarten to birth to kindergarten ratio. It might be like 5% of all county births. But if we're using these zip codes, it might be nominally 105%. And we just look at that consistent trend over time, and that's what we use to help us project kindergarten. I think what's most relevant here with this data is that, let me get my laser pointer on here. You can see we've kind of had an upward slight trend over the last 10 years. And then we hit 2016, which would reflect to the 2021 kindergarten. So remember that number. And then we started to see a dip. It went down a little bit in 2017, came back up a little bit in 2018, came back up a little bit, almost to where it was in 2016 and 2019. And then in 2020, it was down. It was down as low as it was back in 2013. And so I look at that, and that's relatively stable. Like, it's flat. It's not really going up or going down, but that's kind of where we are with that. So if we look at the historical enrollment, and so what we've done here is we've symbolized it to show the relative low numbers in blue and the relatively higher numbers in pinks and reds. So if you look at the births, so we have that 2021 number, so there's that low 2015 birth at 525, and then it comes back up when we had that larger birth in 2016, it comes back up to 563. And so that kind of shows us that relationship between birth and kindergarten. I spent a lot of time focusing on that because kindergarten is the hardest grade to get in a projection.
Right.
And I think that one thing that we can show that we've learned, I'll come back to this, in the pandemic is it has introduced a lot of volatility in the enrollment. This trend that we see here, I call this the COVID correction, where, and this is a pattern that we've seen in most districts across the country. And many of them, every district has rebounded, has reacted to COVID differently. Some of them didn't miss a beat. Some of them still grew. Some of them lost 30 to 40% of their enrollment. But I think what's important is that what a lot of districts did is they thought that, well, we're just going to come right back and we're going to be back where we were before. And like you can see here, we bounced back, but we weren't on that same trajectory as we were before. We aren't back to where we were as if COVID never happened. And so that's kind of introduced that dispersion in our cone of certainty. And so we provide basically 4 different projections. We have a high projection, which is going to take those observed trends of the past that were the highest and project those forward. And so I would look at the high projection and I would consider that kind of the worst case scenario. Everything takes off like gangbusters. We're in this weird bizarro economy right now where interest rates are high. No one, theoretically, no one should be able to get houses, but there's a housing shortage. And so it's nuts. Usually when we look at this, we see, well, if you've got a low projection, that would be something that you would look at when you have high interest rates. But we're in kind of this bizarro economy right now. When we look at the low projection, that looks at the lowest observed trends over the last 10 years and projects that forward. And so that would basically exacerbate what we observed with COVID and kind of treat that like the new normal, whereas the high would almost ignore it. And then the moderate and the recommended are kind of in the middle. The recommended is basically, the moderate is basically a simple average, and the recommended might go in and make some adjustments for outliers. I think you might look at this and you might say, well, shoot, we're just going to plan to the high. and that's fine. I think it's okay to plan for the high for certain things. I think for looking at construction and those types of things, I think looking at the high is totally acceptable. I wouldn't necessarily go out of the budget and hire teachers based on the high projection. And so that's why I think it's important to kind of look at the different models that you have. I think in reality, next year is a big year as far as determining what's going to happen moving forward the next 10 years. When we do these types of studies, it's not a one-time thing. When you've got a construction program going on, I think that you should at least do a district-wide projection every year. You don't have to do a deep dive by school, but just do a district-wide projection so that you can just get a sense of what those birth trends look like, who's showing up at kindergarten, what the building permits look like. And that'll help us stay on track and ahead of any surprises that we might have. And that's what I kind of told the folks out in Licking County is that they have this big fear that they're going to wake up one day and they're going to have 1,000 more kids. And that's just not going to happen. It's not going to happen overnight. You're going to see things coming. You're going to see the births ticking up. You're going to see additional construction date or additional construction going on. One thing that I do think is important is that there's this misnomer that every time everybody sees a home under construction, they assume that, oh my gosh, there's going to be 4 new kids coming out of that home next year. And that's simply not the case because not every family that moved into a new house in Gahanna came from outside. They may be coming from elsewhere in Gahanna. They may be selling a house or renting their former house out. Typically, we don't see those homes backfill as quickly as the new homes do. And so that's just something to kind of keep an eye on and consider as we're looking at this data. So here is this is the recommended projection. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this because I think you're more interested in the high. So here's the high projection. And so what this high projection does is, again, this kind of looks at COVID as kind of that outlier and tries to get us back on track, looking at those historically high observed trends and projecting them forward. If we look at this, and I'm just going to kind of go down here and look by grade level, we're in a great shape. We're in great shape as far as facilities go in capacity. K-5, we're going from 3616, which is the projection for next year, going up just shy of 4,000. And I've got slides down the road that will compare the capacity to the projection. So don't try to do the math in your
And
head.
then we'll make sure you have these slides also.
Yeah.
Okay, so they don't match up with what we had
With
before.
they have the enrollment study that you.
Yeah, these numbers will.
But just not in the order. of
Correct.
which, yeah.
So middle
Just trying to
school, 1884 up to 2250, and the high school goes from just shy of 2400 up to just shy of 3000. And so this is the high.
Mhm.
And so again, this is kind of that worst case scenario as far as growth goes. Things that you just have to monitor, boundary adjustments, we've got that going on, new school openings in the area, school closures, changes in preschool programs, changes in grade configuration, interest rates and unemployment rates. I think we've got to keep an eye on that. Magnet charter private school opening or closing, and we added our new disclaimer was pandemics. That's something, believe it or not, it has an impact on projections.
Sure.
So kind of getting into the orange piece of this, the student potential. And so again, what this does is this looks at student yields. And so when we're talking about student yields, we're talking about numbers of students per housing unit. And this looks at what available developable acreage we have in the district.
Do we not have that? We don't have that.
We don't have
at
this
all.
yet.
Okay, so I'm like, I
This is
don't
new.
remember seeing
Yeah.
oranges. I know I didn't see oranges.
No, you didn't.
I didn't, so the reason I haven't given you the orange report yet, I wanted to flip this one over and see how you reacted and then figure out. Well, I don't want to put so much in the report because there's a lot of different paces that we can go at as far as development. I think we did 100, 150, 200 last time.
Yeah.
And I think that 150 is the sweet spot.
Okay.
So we'll talk about that. But this shows, what our existing land use is. And if it's in that black or gray color, that means that it's tax exempt. So it's city, school district, church, etc. We have had some cases. There was actually a piece over here. This is that Victoria Manor area off of
Off of Stelzer.
Stelzer.
Mhm.
So here's the funny part. about 80% of that parcel, that development is Columbus City Schools.
Mm.
It's really, it's this little,
It's a weird section.
it's that little
right?
island over there. Yeah, here,
And
right
the
here.
parcel of land, there's like a portion to the east. And then, all of the middle is Columbus. And then there's two little parcels in the back of the property that are getting that. It's so
It's really
bizarre.
weird. And what's funny is we've seen similar things in other districts. A great example is Olentangy. There's this giant subdivision called Sierra Reserve. And it's on a golf course and it's got these cul-de-sacs. And there's literally cul-de-sacs that 4 houses on the end of the cul-de-sac might be Buckeye Valley and the rest of the cul-de-sac is Olentangy. And so the houses are assigned, where the master bedroom is in the house. So I've seen it where the district line crosses, where it crosses the parcel, and the judge, governor, whoever has to make that decision, it's where the master bedroom is in the house. And so looking at this Victoria Manor, there's going to be some buildings that will be in Gahanna and some buildings that will be in Columbus. So it's going to be interesting to see how that all shakes out. I'm sure at some point, someone's going to say, well, they should just all go to Gahanna. So, but this is kind of our current existing land use. The agricultural area that we have in there, that's that tan color. There's not a whole lot left. The green would be residential or rural residential. Now, student yields, and that's what we talked about earlier. This is our number of students per unit. And so apartments, overall, it's 0.22, and that's down a little bit. It was 0.24 last time we did it. And this is one of those things that we've added additional inventory. We've added more apartment units. They just haven't filled in with as many kids. And so that's driven that yield down a little bit.
So that means that for every apartment unit, it would yield 0.22 students.
Yeah, every 100 on average. I mean, some are going to be higher, some are going to be lower, but on average, every apartment is going to yield 22 students K-12 per 100 units.
Per 100 units. So it's important to understand because a lot of people think, big apartment complex, a lot of units, a lot of kids, and it doesn't always play out that way. Right.
And typically, the more expensive, the higher end they are, we tend to see lower yields.
Right.
Sure.
I mean, they're not building a lot of, no one's building a lot of affordable housing.
No.
And so, you can start to see if we've got a 3-bedroom apartment, we might see a higher yield there, but typically the rent might be $2,500 a month or something like that. And so we typically don't see a lot of students coming. Single family, on the other hand, I think that went up from 0.44 to 0.46. So that's up a little bit over the last couple of years. So these are our currently active developments. And so we've got these little numbers here, and there's a key that will correspond and tell you what they are, how many, kind of what their progress is. But these are actively developing subdivisions. And so we have the Victoria Manor over here, but that's the 187 and the 188. I think the 188 is something different, Wendler Crossing or something like that, but still same story. And so this gives you the total number of units that build out by project name. And so we've got them listed by name, the housing type, what their status is, whether they're planned or they're construction, what elementary and middle school they're assigned to, units that build out, what that maximum enrollment could be, and what the mature enrollment would be. For multifamily, we didn't use a dynamic enrollment because the multifamily is going to be a little bit more stable because it's more transient. We don't see the ebb and flow with those like we do the single family. So this is our vacant developable land. And so this is stuff.
So can we go back to that? So on the previous, all of those developments, none of them are single family homes or the
there's
193?
Briarfield, Farms
Okay,
of
there.
Jefferson,
Okay.
development.
So just a few of them are.
Just a few of them.
Okay.
But those are, I mean, if you look at the number of students,
Yeah, that's
those
where
are
the
almost
most-
more significant
Yes.
than the apartments.
And those are all in Jefferson
Yes.
Township, right?
If you're going to have single family development, it's
It's
going to be
gonna be
Jefferson Township.
Right.
So here is the vacant developable land. So if it's in yellow, that means that it's owned by a developer. It just hasn't started going yet.
Oh, God.
And that could be they're not ready. They're trying to build out what they already have, or it's We're holding out to see if we can get higher density, those types of things. And so it's owned by the developer. It's not platted out yet. It hasn't been rezoned. If it's going to get rezoned, that's just kind of where it is in its development cycle. And then if it's blue, it's just vacant developable land. The one site that's not on here that there might have been some rumbling about is the Columbus School for Girls site. When we talked to them last time, we talked to them in 2017, they had no plans for selling the site. We've reached out to them, we haven't heard back, but I've got a slide here on the end that'll talk a little bit about that, but.
Will we get these pages later? Because
Yeah.
this actually is.
Yeah.
Those are the things.
These is what you
we
want.
get asked about more than anything else.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And we have an index for like what these parcel numbers are, and who the owners are on the
Okay,
slide as
that's
well.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, Scott, you're gonna talk about the Columbus.
Yeah, I have a questions and answers section.
So it's back to your point about the impact, like with what's going on with Intel,
Right.
that was one of my biggest concerns is, people that have sat on the land and were never going to sell, but now there's a huge opportunity
Right,
that they could really, benefit from. Now might be the time. that
Right,
They
now might
would. So how much of that do we have? And
so
what's-
I don't think that there's a whole, there might be, I think we've got 1,200 acres. Or maybe I have to look back at it. I can't remember what the acreage is. It's not more than a couple hundred acres that would be in that category of CSG, and that's 100 of it. Like that's 100 acres in itself.
Right.
But
that
So are
at
you
least
saying that-
frames it, that frames kind of what our even higher side could
Yeah.
possibly be, just to kind of put it into scale.
Right.
I don't think it's a scary number of parcels. If that's,
So
Yeah.
that's good. If we
'Cause-
could outline it that way, we would all feel a little bit more comfortable knowing what the
What that potential is.
true big number could be, or what the range could be. That would
I
just
mean,
be
if you
good.
think, the CSG site's a great example, because it's
Mhm.
97 acres.
Right.
It's easy to do math on that.
Right.
So if it's, if we're getting 1.3 units per acre, that's like 130 units or something like that. And if we multiply that times 0.46, we're at like 60 kids, K-12, out of 100 acres.
Right.
So that just kind of gives you
Right.
an idea of what the impact of 100 acres could be.
Right.
Okay, so this is the student potential. And so what this does is this kind of releases those known housing units and exhausts, what's currently in the pipeline, what's owned by developers, and then it starts releasing that vacant land at 150 units a year. And then once it kind of reaches that that max, in this case, it reaches it in 2040. It's at 9,168 students. Then we start to see that housing turnover where the homes don't fill in as quickly as they did before. We settle down about 8,608, and that would be in 2059. So this is the impact on capacity. And so this should look familiar from last time. This shows basically the first 10 years of the enrollment projection. So here's the apples. And then we show in 5-year increments what the student potential looks like. And again, they don't align perfectly, but they're close, and it just kind of gives you a general idea. But as our capacity comes online, 23, 24, 24, 25, 25, 26, I've changed those numbers in here to reflect that capacity. And you can see those utilization numbers getting low. So middle school, 109%, those additions come online, we're down to 84. And then we get back up into the 90s. We stay in relatively good shape for the rest of time as it's modeled here. We're a little tight at elementary school, but I don't think that's all that significant. I mean, that's a couple portals. Like it's not we need a new school, we need another addition number. It's about what it was that we modeled last time.
And just for clarification, that's using the high projection.
The high projection.
On the Apple side.
High projection on the Apple side. So
This
again,
is like worst.
Yeah.
Yes, not
Worst
worse.
case
That's the
scenario?
wrong.
So,
wrong
I wouldn't-
adjective, but-
Space.
No, I think that is the right. I mean, I think what Sue, you're asking is of all the vacant land,
Right.
right? What's the worst case scenario?
And-
This is-
and-
That's it.
But that's
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
a good barometer for us to all kind of know so that
Yes,
we can
that
feel
is-
very comfortable with where we're at.
So this is, so the orange side of this is based on maintaining that 1.3 units per acre.
Yeah.
Which has been,
So if we have
practice.
any huge deviation from that, that
And
could,
this would
right.
so
that could
here's the
change.
2 unit per acre.
Okay,
And so if we get up to 2 units per acre, we go to 95.87. And what were we before? We were 91.68. So we're about 400 students higher at max and 200 students, almost 300 students higher at the mature build out. But that assumes that our vacant and developable land gets approved for higher density.
Right.
Which we don't know that's going to happen, but this is one of those things that we can look at, like, well, what happens if this Intel
Right.
applies this pressure to
right.
do something like this? Here's what it looks like and that, and it's not all that much worse. And the reason is because you're relatively built out. Like you've got, a couple, I think we're at 900 acres, I think is what's left, like 1,200 units. And if we go 1,200 units at 1.3, and it goes up to 1,900 units at 2. And so it's not a huge scary number. Okay, so there's some questions that I was given before, so I've prepared some answers for those.
Thank you.
So the first one was, we've got the cohort survival. What about the apples and oranges? We brought back the apples and oranges.
Thank you.
So that one's answered. So how will Intel impact the Jefferson Township enrollment? I have a separate presentation, and we can share it with Jill and Stephen. They can send it to you later. What I did for them, I'll just kind of give you the elevator pitch. Believe it or not, we've been through this before in Central Ohio. There was a little motorcycle company in 1980 that decided that they were going to build a big plant in Marysville.
Yeah.
So over the 80s, which districts do you guys think grew the most as that plant expanded?
Dublin and Hilliard.
Well, you cheated.
I told you already.
So when I
Has to be.
so when I asked
It's not Marysville, but you would ask the question.
Yeah. So when I asked the Licking County ESCs, are like, well, Fairbanks, Marysville, they didn't grow. It was Dublin and it was Hilliard because they had the infrastructure there. That if you've driven up 33 and you see there's that sewer treatment plant right there between Marysville and New California, that didn't open until 2004.
Right.
And so all that Jerome Village development happening in Dublin, that wasn't possible before that plant opened. So the growth is going to happen where the infrastructure is there soon.
Yes.
And so I'm going to show one map from that presentation, and then Jill's going to pinch me and tell me to shut up.
Whatever they want.
So this is the drive time from the
Yeah.
Intel site.
Mhm.
And so the dark red is 10 minutes. 10 to 20 is in the orange, and here you are right here.
Yep.
You're right here at 10 to 20 minutes. And so my gut tells me that New Albany, Big Walnut, Westerville, Gahanna, Reynoldsburg, you guys are on the firing line.
Absolutely.
They're talking about, infrastructure projects in Licking County, but they don't have a unified sewer system out there.
No.
It's all like 19 separate independent sewer systems. And so I think this is something that we just need to keep an eye on as we continue to move forward.
But ultimately, even if we are, a main site for Intel employees to, bring their families, we still only have so much developable land. We
Right.
still only have so many parcels that, at this point can have single family homes.
So the only thing I would say, if I think in this document, it showed the percentage of people that were over 6. If we have a huge turnover in our retirement level people, that turns, that's where we could have it, because I was shocked at how high the percentage of retirees are within Gahanna. I mean, I kind of knew it, but it was much bigger. But if you looked at it and said, okay, housing market continues, you have more people that want to move into this area and are gonna buy at the high end, people are gonna say, I'm going to
Arizona.
wherever,
Yeah.
you know? I mean,
Yeah.
that could be the only other thing that I thought of looking through this that is a risk
Yeah, so,
from our enrollment perspective.
yeah, so what you're saying is they can't afford not to sell.
Right.
If the
Right.
pressure.
Right.
And so the other just napkin math that we did was our current our single family yield is 0.46. Let's just say it went to 0.56, which is still way lower than Olentangy.
Okay.
That's another 1,322 kids on top of what we've been looking at. That starts to get K-12.
So roughly 100 kids per grade level.
Right.
If it works out.
And that's not going to, like, that's something that we'll be able to keep an eye on,
Right,
and we'll see it coming. It's not going to happen overnight.
exactly.
But
I mean, to your point about doing the updates kind of yearly or whatever and seeing, I think we're kind of in that mode where we're gonna have to kind of watch it and see what's happening, just so
What actually pushes them out of their houses?
part of the market,
the market.
Why?
just they, like Steve said, they can't, like, they're
What's
sitting
going on?
the housing value. Like,
The housing.
they may have built their house for 200,000.
Uh-huh.
And now
Oh,
it's
so the
valued,
property
now it's valued
Yeah,
at 500.
It's not that anybody is gonna be
Yeah.
pushing,
They may
and
not sell it.
taxes will,
The
and
taxes.
And
yeah.
And it's like, why am I paying these high taxes for the schools if my kids aren't here?
Mhm.
And so,
Or it's not worth to sell, or they bought it for 200, they maybe wouldn't sell it for, but at 6.
yeah.
They'd say, I can't afford not to.
It's a mindset shift of the retirees based on a lot of different assumptions. That was the only thing that I could see percentage wise where there was still an area of concern. If it does, who knows if it would, but I mean, if we're looking at it every year, we could see where that could have potential.
I think that you're one of the like, you're somewhat sheltered because the majority of the housing stock in the district is 2-bedroom, kind of that's 3-bedroom Royal Manor, 2,000 square feet. And that's not going to draw the same yields that you're going to get from 3,500 square feet.
True,
Like you'll get,
that's true.
I have my first student, my first child. I live in Royal Manor or Goshen Lane. Then I move out somewhere that's got the bigger homes. And because you've got such a high percentage of that kind of housing stock, I don't think that you're at risk at getting to
As much of that,
like an Olentangy. Like Olentangy's yield is 0.8.
yeah,
But
Oh, is it
that's,
that high there?
yeah, but that's because their average,
but their homes are, yeah,
I mean, the average home in Olentangy was built in 1999.
right.
Your average home was probably built in the 60s.
Right.
So that's where it's a little different. But
Yeah.
there will come a time where people start buying up 2 houses in Royal Manor and knocking them down and building a big one because they're not making more land. And so I still think
It's happened in other areas
Yeah.
across the country.
I
That's
think
why
we're 20. I think we're
Yeah.
20 years away from that situation. But
How long?
20.
But I mean, something to be aware of.
Yeah, I mean that's something.
Right.
That's something you'll see coming.
I was just
Are
giving
there-
a comment. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Are there forecasts about families that have a set income and when the prices of everything go up, they're gonna get, gentrified and squeezed out maybe? Are there programs, and maybe this isn't a meeting and your scope, but
I don't think that's school district.
do you have projections about
I
the
can
percentage?
I can share where it's happened. I don't know. I don't have a button for it, but I've seen districts that have done that. It's Victorian Village is a bad example, but there's neighborhoods outside of Birmingham, Alabama, where they saw it like in mass over like the course of 15 years. Like it just like buy a house for 100,000, put $750,000 or buy 2 houses at 100,000 each, put $750 million house on it.
I've
But
seen it in California.
yeah,
It's not
So.
great.
last thing on
Wait
that.
1 second.
I was just gonna say to your point, so like in the neighborhood that I live in, it's it's a pretty big neighborhood. I live in like right by High Point,
Right.
more back that area. There are a lot of families with children, but there's also a lot of people who are empty nesters.
Mhm.
And the houses are going for crazy prices right now. And I don't understand why some of my neighbors are staying. I'm like, goodness, if I didn't have kids, I'd be selling. And so that's my concern, not so much for the whole district, but then that one elementary school, I mean, we can't get the bus, like that's the elementary school that we will be, as far as I'm concerned, will always be going to. And so then I think of just the overload of just that neighborhood school. And so then we'd be looking at like redistricting again, because you'd have to balance that school.
Redistricting. I mean, how often does redistricting happen in Olentangy? It's pretty
About every
often.
couple years, Scott does it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it is much more common in other districts.
Yes.
We've been very fortunate to only
Yeah, we
You
haven't done it nearly as much
do it
as.
a couple times in the last decade. And one was middle school and one was that.
We talked about this one. This was the, what if the numbers change? So we model if we change from 1.3 to the two units per acre. So we've talked about that. If we talked about this, if we plan based on the moderate recommended projections, what are the assumptions used in the high? Again, the high projection looks at those highest observed trends in the past and projects them forward. We talked a little bit about this. This is the CSG land. That's 97 acres. If it's at 1.3 units an acre, 126 units or 50 kids.
Why are they holding on to it? Does anyone know?
It was gifted to them like 25 years ago. And I don't know if they use it for like a retreat ground or what they're.
Like maybe like the way the Trip property was, we have the Trip property.
Yeah, but it doesn't have the same conservancy.
Right, right.
And it's so far away from where it's school.
Where they are, right?
It's so commercial. It's really weird.
That's what's weird, yeah. So they have to get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know, that's what I thought too. Doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's woods, yeah.
But I don't know. When I clicked on the parcel, it's like commercial.
Might be a mistake.
Yeah. That was it. So again, we'll get you that student potential report, but this was the meat of it that you saw today. Happy to answer any other questions or show the entire Intel presentation.
I love that map of the drive time. Mhm.
Drive time.
Yeah, just to know what the implications are going to be.
Yeah,
You
that would
know,
be great to
yeah.
send,
Yeah,
if you don't mind.
absolutely.
Yeah, that would
It was
be
it
awesome.
was a public meeting. The governor's representative was there.
Thank you.
Thank you so
much.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Scott.
that's very interesting, very helpful to kind of frame everything for
Yeah.
us.
Yes.
So thank you
You're
for
in
that.
great shape.
I'm gonna write that down.
Yeah.
You said we're in
No, no,
great
this is
shape.
being recorded.
Got your
We're recording what you said.
Celebrate that. Thank you very much for coming.
I don't know if it's appropriate for me to share this at this time, but I always like to check on information when I can. So I checked on the Lincoln Elementary walls. And the principal shared that they have some holes in walls in bathrooms from the doors, but did not reference any other holes in walls and said that the walls that are white are in bad shape and they definitely need like paint touch up. But other than that, she didn't reference huge drywall repairs needed.
Can I ask a quick
Sure.
question before we go on to the next agenda point? And that is, with the Master Facilities Planning Committee, that's a group that has an architect, an engineer, a construction management person, 2 teachers, a construction grade flooring person, a lot of people with a lot of expertise. And that group hasn't met since December. And that's why I keep asking the question.
Combined.
Yeah,
Everyone's been invited to the steering committee.
we've been invited, but I think the problem is those meetings are at noon. And not everybody can make it. So we've invited both groups, but we're gonna have a meeting on the 9th or
asking the questions because it would seem to me that people with that level of experience in those areas, I think it would be a good idea for them to be able to put eyeballs on the plans while they're in DD. That's why I keep asking the question, because if we circle them back while we're in the construction documents phase, at that point, it's too late for them to.
So there
weigh in.
is a lag time between DD and estimating, and you're still in DD.
Okay.
You don't go to construction documents until you.
Which is why we circle back around from previous conversations to say, okay, look at timing. And everybody felt comfortable with the 69614 that we could still make changes.
Okay.
Because initially, we didn't think that we could.
That was not
Yeah.
clear before.
Yes.
Okay.
So that's why when we were coming back to saying, how can we get things scheduled? And we were looking at different dates.
Okay.
So that should be coming out to say, can people meet on which of these two dates and in the evening? So we would have better representation of the committee.
Got it.
And versus the noon, because normally we would be the second Tuesday at noon.
Right.
So we were looking at how
But
could
that's
we,
the steering committee. That's a different.
but it's all the same now.
Haven't invited.
Yeah.
So
I don't,
I do not see those.
yeah, I don't know that we invited everybody.
On that
Some
email.
people are moving. So I mean, we need to combine them more.
I thought that they were.
Yeah.
I just don't want to miss the opportunity to
So-
get people of expertise.
right.
Yeah.
That have.
We're in total agreement on
Okay.
that. So
Yeah,
I think
and
it's,
the meeting on the middle schools, there was real changes that made,
Mhm.
the administrative offices from.
Okay.
Middle school
so we're at
west,
that same stage on the high school
similar,
Okay.
right?
for that. So to
Okay.
your point,
So, yes, so we have an engineer, we have an architect, but to have an outside engineer, to have an outside architect. I think it's got it.
Who live in the district.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Outside meeting on the committee.
When I'm talking about people who are not an active designer on the project.
Yeah.
Having like
I
Jan,
see, okay.
who is the engineer, or Dave, who is the architect, or people who have that level of expertise.
Yeah, I
putting
see what you're
eyeballs on it and saying,
Thank you.
I see what you're saying.
because I just don't want to get to the point where it's too late for that to happen, to have them affect any change at all. If we've got a resource, we're just not using it.
Well, it's also the timing of when it's appropriate. So I think
Okay.
what Sue is saying is accurate, either the 9th or the 14th, and we'll still be in the estimating phase, and we're still gonna have lots of extreme kind of work on value engineering.
we'll have actually probably more information meeting at that time,
Right.
right? To know what maybe the delta is,
Yeah.
to have some of the discussions
Yeah,
about.
so DD is due June 3rd. That's when the estimating goes.
Starts.
So we'll have that week and be able to kind of do what you're saying.
Yeah, and I sure don't want to slow anything down, because right now the completion date hasn't changed.
Well,
So,
yeah, because when you slow things down, it costs more later.
Right.
So, yeah, I agree.
So we'll follow up on that and make
Yeah.
sure those meetings get scheduled.
Yeah.
And I think checking the names, is that what you were saying too?
Yeah.
Catherine?
those names are
Between the
not
two
on the email distribution list that I'm seeing
Yeah.
I mean, I just checked it. David's on there, Chris is on there.
from last week.
McCoy.
From last week.
Yeah, we put them on there last week.
There's-
Chris is moving, so
that's it.
he's moving out of state, accepted another job, so he still might come. But David was on our last meeting.
Boy,
Um,
there
I
are
don't
a
think
couple
Jan
missing
was,
though.
but we'll make sure. he is.
So
Okay,
we'll verify
Yeah.
that the dates or the names are all what
Right.
they should be on the invites. Okay. All right, on to number 3, Mr. Lofton.
All right. So after talking about all that really interesting stuff, well, we can talk about PI funds and other projects we have going on. Since we do have 3 new board members, I added into the packet what we've done since 2017, just to kind of help you catch up.
Thank you, Scott.
This is a great document if we could get on the website.
Yeah.
Like, I
Sure.
think that's,
Yeah.
I meant to say that actually at the beginning, that all of this historical information, I mean, I think this is fantastic for people to be able to see.
Right, because you want to see where your dollars, where have the dollars gone? So I think that
It's great.
yeah.
I mean, we're at, basically 3 pages, 3.5 pages, of projects we've been able to do in the district
Absolutely.
in just the last 5, 6 years. So
And if you
it's,
don't have kids in that particular building, you don't know.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to share that first so that you have that. Look at that, whatever you have time.
Thank you, Scott.
Sure. Let me go on to PI funds. So I like to do a 5-year forecast and try to work it out. And put potential projects out there. The one thing I just want to share is, even though we have potential projects out there in the future, sometimes they slide. We want to get the maximum benefit out of anything we have, say a roof. If the roof is still holding up and things are good, well, let's slide it out another year. Because we do have somebody come in and look at our roofs on a yearly basis, tell us if they see anything. And so we just want to try to maximize that investment from whatever 30 years ago and try to put that money out and we can use it for other things. So just keep in mind that it does slide. So for this summer, and there's a couple projects that have already been done because we needed to do them previous. We're going to do HVAC at High Point. They currently have univents. There's a few, but the univents are old, they're inefficient. And, I provided a couple sentence for each project that we're doing. So it tells you why we're doing it and what the benefits will be. We're also doing it at Blacklick. It's not on here because it's part of phase 2 dollars. We're also doing casework and painting at Blacklick. So and then we get to the middle school east bleacher repair. I will say we had a really tough time getting someone to bid on such a small project. Everybody's looking for the almighty dollar right now. So Shore Architects, were able to, I don't want to say twist arms, but use their contacts to.
They
to
called
help
in
us.
favors.
They did call in some favors.
Help
to
us.
Find it. So what we're going to do is we're going to slide those bleachers forward out of the way. And for those that haven't seen it, what was happening is the current bleachers are on basically pylons in the back. And we have water that is just running down and eroding that area underneath it. So it became unsafe. So what we're going to do is we're going to build a retaining wall on the backside, fill that area in, and then we will, where the concrete is, the concrete stops about 6 feet before the retaining wall. So we'll actually, they pump like a foam underneath that concrete to make sure it's supported. They can get into all the cracks and like expanding foam. And then they'll extend the concrete to the back. So any water coming in will now run off the backside of it. And we won't have that erosion that we currently have. So that's the $64,650 that we're looking at. So
There'll be some sort of drainage to catch the water on the other side. That would be.
well, that'll be a part of the east project
Okay.
that we're doing because we have to create a road there
Okay.
for fire to get around.
Right.
So that'll be a part of that project.
So that will just be melded together.
Yeah, so
between-
it'll run
I know
off the
exactly
back.
Where you're talking
Yes.
about too.
I'm just imagining
Yeah,
the building getting flooded.
Yeah.
We do have to put a road back there for east.
Okay.
So it'll be a part of that project, so that all the drainage will work and work together. So, and we are talking to potentially doing a bigger drainage project at East, potentially next summer, coming from the High Point area, lot of that water rolls this way. What we want to understand is the new detention pond at High Point is going to capture a lot more of that water. So hopefully that'll solve some of our issues, but if we still see issues after that is in play, then we'll come back in and do some other drainage issues on that side of the track, so.
Scott, right now, until that's fixed, parents, fans can't sit in those, right?
Yeah, they won't be able to sit until, so our goal is to have it ready for the fall, because that's where JV football is gonna. I think that's where I believe JV football is going to play.
Do you know when they're gonna start on that?
As soon as the school year's over. So we'll have to mobilize, but we just awarded this. It's actually on this board agenda for Thursday, so. Then we have East needed some more storage cabinets. So that's the 81,000 you see there. We're just helping them out in storage. They're losing some storage with the new building. At the end of their wings, there's an area where they use for storage right now, so we'll help them out there. Goshen Lane, where the K-12 playground is, where the bus loop is. It's fairly close to the road right there, so we added, the fence was starting to, needed some repairs, so we ended up creating a fence that went all the way around, so to make it safer for our K-12 students right there. So that's the fence, that's 6,900. Clark Hall fence, as all of you have seen, needed some help, and that is complete. We then had dugout repairs out of baseball. The dugouts started to, you see cracks in the block. It started to kind of push in at the openings, and that caused the roof to create other issues. So we had a lot of water getting in there, trapping, where potential for mold and things to happen. So we came in, we secured those blocks, we fixed them and made them so that they don't have the ability to move in anymore. And then we fixed the roofs on both baseball dugouts. And then the 56,000 for scoreboards, the baseball scoreboard is over 10 years old. And then with us putting in 2 scoreboards for softball to make it equal, it's putting in a JV scoreboard and upgrading the score. Not actually, it's replacing it with a more up-to-date. It's very similar to the baseball scoreboard out there. We also are doing windows at Goshen, and that's going to come out of ESSER funds. We are then purchasing 3 buses, and we slowly but surely are getting our bus fleet to a manageable level. I think our oldest is 2006, so we continue to get those older buses out of service. But we try to do 3 every 2 years, just to keep bringing them in.
So that's the current rotation, is every other year. Yes. With the buses.
Yeah. And then there's a $350,000 that we move over to IT for them to do iPad replacement, Chromebooks, whatever they're in need of.
Which may end up being some money that we could potentially reallocate with the supplement from ESSER funds that we've been using.
Mhm.
So that might be something in the future that we can reallocate for something else.
That's what I have to present. Any questions?
The only thing that I saw, to your point about things that were shifting from when you had prepared the schedule, I think back in February,
Yeah.
was the sidewalk and parking lot repairs that you were thinking that we would do those this year for, I think it was Chapel Field and Royal Manor.
Yeah,
That
we are going to do some through internal regular general dollars. We're going to do some sidewalk curb repair.
Okay.
But as we started to get into the project, we were talking to Shore and they felt that we were getting into it too late and we wouldn't get any contractors to bid on it. So
Okay.
we're working on it earlier this year, this coming year, so that we can get the bid out there and get
That's
ahead of it.
true. Probably for a lot of things, you're gonna have a longer lead time, so we're gonna have to talk about
And we're,
next summer's projects even earlier to get them in queue.
and for those type of projects, we're going up against all
Right.
Oh, sure.
cities,
Oh,
you
absolutely.
know, the state.
Yeah.
We are a very small player
Right.
in that group, and we're gonna get the last resort of anybody that wants to get some work, or maybe they're not the best
Right.
group that we want to have do the work, so.
One thing I would recommend with transportation is looking at the number of buses that are 2007. Because that's 15 years old. The diesel buses last a long time, but their bodies don't. And most have plywood floors, and I think making sure as we grow, we have an adequate fleet, and maybe asking our drivers to give a pulse check on where each bus is. I know we've struggled to get parts for some buses because of supply chain issues, and just worried that if we have 10, 11 buses, however, that are 2007, that means 1/6 of our daily route is 15 years old.
Well, after we buy these 3 this summer, we will only have 4 buses that are, that are older than 2007.
Okay.
So we're making good headway.
Yeah.
The good part about buses is we have mechanics on staff that go through them on a regular basis. Our drivers do a great job of cataloging things that they're seeing. And then before they go out on the road every year, the highway patrol sends in their mechanics and they go through every bus. And if they spot things, we have to fix it before they'll release that bus. So it's, buses are one of the things that everyone does really well because it's so important.
Play around with.
Yeah,
No,
it-
which
yes,
is
it's so
great.
important
Right.
when you're transporting, our students. That's the most important thing we do.
So when did we start buying new buses again? Right,
2014.
2014. So how many are between 2007 and 2014, right? Age, that would be the question of how many more do we need to replace?
So
That's what grow, right?
6.
Right.
We have 10 buses that are older than 2014. There's some
Okay.
on the other side of the page.
So
The very top. Yeah, that's.
I think that one's.
How many buses do we have?
we have 60 routes, and then we have spares. So I think close to 7.
Yeah,
Are the
I'm
blue
just
ones,
curious.
Yeah.
are the blue ones the ones we're getting rid of?
Yes,
The
blue
green
ones,
are-
yeah.
We're buying.
Yeah, green will be by,
Okay.
blue will be the going away.
So like, obviously the construction is happening at High Point right now. So on River Ridge this week, they like tore out, not the school, it's a city project. Like the drainage.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, as I'm sitting there, again, driving my kids to and from school, and I do it like 4 times a day, because, or whatever, because I have both schools. I just felt like the timing of it was really bad. Did we have to pick the last week of school to tear apart the whole road, but it needs like to be waited to next week? And that's not a school thing. I was thinking like the city.
Yeah.
Could we have thought maybe?
They're
not
doing that all
most
over.
ideal? I know, because I went into the Ross and Cherry Bottom too, and I was
Yes.
like,
Yep.
but this was literally like,
Yeah.
this is right by High Point, right by Middle School East, and I'm just like,
Yeah.
you're having to dodge the children that are walking to and from school, because also safety patrol right now at High Point, if you're an upcoming 5th grader, you're learning, so there's extra kids
Right.
at each corner, plus all these workers. I was just like,
Yeah.
I feel like the timing was just really bad to tear up the road and put in new
I think the trouble, Rebecca, is there's just such a shortage of labor that they.
Yeah, I just felt like if they could have just waited a week
Yeah,
and there wouldn't be so many kids out
a
there.
week they'll be on another job, right? It's so hard right now with the labor.
I get it, but
I thought this was great information.
Yes.
Scott it was very good.
Yes, thank you.
And I love this, like Rose said, just to be able to
Yeah.
see, so you can look
See
back
by
and say,
buildings,
right,
too. I like just
exactly.
The way that it's organized.
Yeah, I mean, the PI levy and Scott's work and his team have been godsend, because before that, like, think about this, we had no PI before 2014. And it's $3 million a year, and over time, we replaced 5 HVAC systems, buses,
I think even thinking
roofs, asphalt,
how to put it on the website, like
Right.
your tax dollars at work, like
Mhm.
this is amazing.
Yeah, I'll work with Judy.
Yeah.
We'll come up with a
It's growing, great, I love your idea.
As we are planning out additional ads, upgrades, like at the Blackwood Athletic Complex and such, we'll be talking about how we might be able to use some PI funds in the future for those enhancements as well, so.
Great. Any questions for Scott? All right.
Thank you.
We have a
Thank you.
special meeting.
Well, no, we have.
Oh,
we
we
still
still
have
have fun.
the whole reason for the meeting.
I'm watching the time, and there's a common theme here. Any questions? She's doing any questions, Scott? We're not now. Scott was giving me the thumbs up, going, go a little bit longer. Go a little bit longer. Stretch it out. No,
Well, it's because
It's okay.
we decided we'd put Mark first so
So they
he's
can
lead.
lead.
Yes. Poor Scott, he's
It's
here for the duration anyhow,
But
so.
it's okay. So what I can do talking through this is nothing's really changed in where we've been. So one of the things, really revamping the overall financial report. Because, it's over 100 pages, but what I've given you, it's really all about one page. I mean, we can talk about the ending cash balance at the end of April was over 320 million. But this report is all about how are we doing against our 5-year forecast that the board's approved. This is all against the November forecast still, is in 2 nights to approve the new one. But as we look through this, when you look at the revenue piece, everything's on track. There, you'll see significant percentage variances in the state foundation piece, but that's because things are being coded differently than they were at the beginning of the year. With those things that were unrestricted now are restricted. The restricted looks like it's 142%. A variance, but when you look at the overall state foundation, the unrestricted and the restricted, it's only we're 3.4% over. So we're right there. When we look at homestead enrollment, this is a timing piece because right now it's showing that we're 25% over. Using the trend that we did for the last 5 years of actual, there was always a payment that was coming in May. Well, this year it's not. We actually got it in April. So this shows that there was an estimate of $1,330,840.70 that we were going to get in May. We actually got it all in April. So when you take that into account, we're not 25% over. We're over $10,899.26. It's rounding says it's a 0% variance. We're spot on. So that brings that down. The other piece that's going to change on Thursday is, if you remember when we talked about the May forecast, we knew that personnel expenses were running under. So the only change we made on the expense side was we reduced salaries by $500,000. We reduced fringe benefits by $500,000. So if you take those into account, we're right on track. We're instead of being underspending our budget by 2%, we're underspending our budget by 1%. We are spot on. So we're in a really good place. We're doing really well. But the big piece is looking forward to looking at how to revamp the financial report, because there's a lot of stuff in there that just I'm not sure is really meaningful.
Yeah.
But I really want to get into more discussion about that to see what it is that we can do. And I'd like to change a little bit, even looking at the stuff about with Scott. I'd like to maybe start to push some things out on the web under the treasurer's office section, and just to put these things out, to put the audits out there, put those reports, put the 5-year forecast, try to start putting some
some things out there for the community. So
Love that.
I welcome any ideas that anyone has, so.
Thanks. Thank you. I think it looks, like you said, I mean, this one pager is good, just to kind of go through and speak to. So that's very helpful. Any other questions for Scott? Anything else that anybody wants to bring up? Okay, it is